billionaire thought he had everything, till a kind waitress showed him the one thing money could never buy: his son's happiness. The morning was cold and gray, and a soft mist covered the small town. The streets were quiet, with only a few cars passing by. Inside a small diner at the corner of Maple Street, the smell of fresh coffee and pancakes filled the air. It was the kind of place where people came not just to eat, but to feel a little warmth and peace. Behind the counter, Mia, a young waitress with tired eyes but a gentle smile, was already busy serving customers. She had been working since dawn, wiping tables, taking orders, and greeting everyone with kindness. She didn't earn much, but she loved her job because she believed kindness always found its way back, just as she placed a cup of hot coffee on an old man's table. The bell above the diner door rang softly. Everyone turned to see who had walked in. A tall man in an expensive black coat entered, holding the hand of a small boy. The man looked serious, important, and a little distant. His clothes and watch made it clear he wasn't from around here. He was Edward Grant, one of the richest businessmen in the state. The boy beside him, Liam, was about 7 years old, wearing a warm jacket and clutching a small toy car in his hand. His steps were slow and uneven. His father gently guided him toward a booth by the window. Mia noticed how careful the man was with the boy. She could tell something about the child was different. Maybe he had a disability. But what she noticed more was the sadness in his eyes. He looked shy and withdrawn, as if he wasn't used to strangers. Edward pulled out a chair for Liam and helped him sit, then opened his laptop and started typing. He didn't even glance at the menu. Mia walked over, smiling softly. "Good morning, sir. What can I get for you today?" she asked in her usual warm tone. Edward looked up briefly. "Just coffee for me." "And for him?" "Pancakes," he said, nodding toward his son. His voice was polite but distant, the kind of voice used by people who live in their own world. Mia nodded and turned to Liam. "And what kind of pancakes do you like, sweetheart? With chocolate chips? Or just plain?" Liam hesitated for a moment, then whispered, "Chocolate chips." His voice was soft, like a whisper from a scared little bird. Mia's heart melted. "Chocolate chips, coming right up," she said with a wink. When Mia left, Edward went back to his laptop, typing away, busy with emails and deals. He didn't notice that Liam was struggling to remove his coat. The zipper was stuck, and his small fingers trembled as he tried again and again. He finally gave up, sighing quietly. Mia noticed it from across the room. She quickly wiped her hands and walked over. "Hey, want me to help you with that?" she asked gently. Liam looked at her, unsure. His father was still busy, and no one had offered to help him like that before. After a moment, he nodded shyly. Mia knelt down beside him and carefully unzipped his coat. Her movements were soft and patient. It's like someone who knew how to care for children. "There you go, all free now," she said with a smile. Liam smiled back, small but real. Edward finally looked up, surprised to see someone so close to his son. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but then he stopped. The sight before him was unexpected. Mia was talking softly to Liam, asking him about his toy car, pretending to make the toy drive across the table. Liam laughed quietly. That sound, that tiny laugh, hit Edward like a wave. He hadn't heard his son laugh like that in a long time. Mia didn't notice Edward watching. She was lost in the small world she had created with the boy, a world filled with kindness and small smiles. When she brought the pancakes, she carefully placed them in front of Liam and even made a small smiley face on top with chocolate syrup. "Now that's how pancakes should look," she said proudly. Liam's eyes sparkled. "Thank you," he said, his voice a little louder now. Edward put his laptop aside, watching silently. There was something different about this woman. She wasn't doing it for tips or attention. She was doing it because she cared. As the diner filled with the soft sound of chatter and clinking plates, Edward felt strangely out of place. He was used to boardrooms, expensive hotels, and people who spoke only in business terms. But here in this simple diner, he felt something unfamiliar: peace. He watched as Mia moved around, greeting each customer by name, smiling, listening to their stories. She wasn't rich, but she had something that money couldn't buy: warmth. Liam kept smiling at her every time she passed by. When she noticed his syrup had dripped on his sleeve, she quickly brought a napkin and cleaned it gently. For the first time, Edward felt a pang of guilt. He realized how rarely he helped his son with simple things: dressing him, feeding him, laughing with him. He always told himself he was too busy, too tired, but deep inside, he knew he had been afraid to face his son's pain. Now, as he watched a stranger show the care he should have given, something shifted inside him. Mia didn't know who Edward was. To her, he was just another tired-looking man with a quiet child. But Edward was watching her closely. Every small act, the way she knelt to Liam's level, the way she spoke softly, the way she made him feel like any other kid, left a mark on him. He couldn't remember the last time someone had treated his son so normally. Without pity, without distance. When the meal was done, Mia brought the bill and placed a small lollipop beside it for Liam. "You were such a good boy today," she said, smiling. Liam grinned, holding the lollipop like a treasure. Edward reached for his wallet, but Mia stopped him. "He can have it for free. It's on the house." Edward blinked, surprised. "Thank you," he said quietly. She just nodded and went to serve another table, unaware of the emotions she had stirred in the billionaire's heart as they prepared to leave. Edward helped Liam with his coat this time. It was awkward, but he tried. Liam looked up and smiled. "She's nice, Daddy," he said softly. Edward looked down at his son, then at Mia across the room, laughing with another customer. He felt something warm spread inside him, a feeling he hadn't known for years. Maybe, he thought, there was more to life than money and work. Maybe there was something he needed to learn from a simple waitress in a small diner. Outside, as they walked toward their car, Edward turned back one last time. Through the diner window, he saw Mia wiping a table and humming softly to herself. He didn't know it yet, but that small moment, that gentle act of kindness, would soon change both of their lives forever. Mia came back to check on Liam, her steps soft and her smile calm. The diner was busy now, the clatter of dishes and voices mixing together. But she only focused on the little boy sitting at the window booth. He had chocolate on his cheeks and syrup on his hands, yet his smile was so pure that it made her heart melt. Edward, sitting across from him, was still lost in his emails, his fingers tapping on the laptop keys without pause. The bright light from the screen reflected in his tired eyes, but there was no joy in them. Mia noticed how the man seemed far away. Even though his son sat just a few feet from him, she crouched beside Liam, holding a small napkin. "Looks like someone had a pancake fight," she joked softly, wiping his face. Liam giggled shyly and said, "I didn't fight the pancakes. They just attacked me first." His small voice carried a spark of humor, and Mia laughed along. The sound of his laughter caught Edward's attention again. He looked up, watching the two of them. He saw how natural it seemed, the way Mia spoke to his son like an old friend. No awkwardness, no hesitation, just warmth. Mia noticed Edward watching and felt a little nervous. She stood up straight and said, "I hope you don't mind. He's really sweet, reminds me of my little brother." Edward nodded slowly. "It's fine," he said, though his tone was soft now, not cold like before. There was something about the way she said those words that stayed with him. She reminded him of a time long ago, when life wasn't all about meetings and deadlines. Before he could think too much, his phone rang. He answered quickly, voice switching back to his firm business tone. Mia quietly stepped away, not wanting to interrupt. While Edward spoke on the phone, Liam played with his toy car on the table. He made small sounds, pretending the car was racing on a track. When the car rolled too far and fell on the floor, Mia immediately came over and picked it up. "Here we go. Pit stop complete," she said playfully, handing it back. Liam smiled again, clearly enjoying her company. Edward ended his call and sighed deeply. He looked at his son. The boy seemed happier than he'd been in months. He wondered why. What was so different about this woman? Maybe it was because she didn't look at Liam with pity. She just treated him like a regular child. Mia went back to the counter, but she kept glancing toward their table. Something about that man and his little boy tugged at her heart. She could see the boy's loneliness, even in his smile. She thought about her own brother, Sam, who had struggled growing up without parents. She knew how important small acts of kindness could be for children who felt alone. Maybe that's why she felt drawn to Liam. She didn't see his disability. She saw a child who needed to feel noticed. When she returned to refill Edward's coffee, she noticed his laptop was closed now. That surprised her. He was just sitting quietly, staring out the window as Liam continued to talk about his toy cars. "Do you like cars too, sir?" she asked casually. Edward looked up, caught off guard. "Cars? Oh, yes, I used to. I collected them when I was younger," Mia smiled. "You should tell him that. He loves them. He was just telling me about how fast his little car can go." Edward hesitated for a moment, then turned toward his son. "Really?" he asked, trying to sound interested. Liam nodded eagerly and started explaining, his hands moving excitedly as he spoke. Edward listened, smiling faintly. It felt strange but good to just listen. For the next few minutes, Mia watched quietly from the counter as father and son talked. She didn't want to interrupt. Edward didn't realize it, but she had helped him open a door that had been closed for too long. He wasn't the same cold, distracted man who had walked in earlier. He was now a father trying, even if clumsily, to connect with his child. After a while, Mia came back with 2 slices of pie. "This one's on the house," she said. Edward frowned slightly. "You don't have to do that." She smiled. "I know, but it's our diner's rule. If someone smiles 3 times in a row, they get a free dessert." Edward raised an eyebrow, then noticed Liam giggling beside him. "He's the one who smiled 3 times, Mia added, winking. "He deserves it." Edward chuckled, the sound surprising even himself. It had been a long time since he laughed that easily. As they ate the pie, Mia noticed how different Edward looked now. The tension in his shoulders had eased, and his eyes had softened. He even helped Liam cut the pie into smaller bites. For a man used to commanding boardrooms, it was clear that these small gestures didn't come naturally to him. But the effort touched Mia deeply. She realized he wasn't cold, just someone who had forgotten what warmth felt like. After a while, the diner quieted down. The morning rush was over. Edward leaned back in his chair, watching his son finish the pie. His heart felt strangely full. He thought about how little time he spent with Liam. Business trips, meetings, endless schedules, all of it suddenly felt meaningless. Watching Mia care for his son with such kindness stirred something inside him he hadn't felt in years. It was guilt, but also gratitude. Gratitude for a stranger who reminded him what mattered most, when it was time to leave. Edward stood up and helped Liam put on his coat. This time, he didn't just watch. He knelt down and zipped it himself. Liam's eyes widened in surprise, but then smiled proudly. "You did it, Daddy," he said. The words were simple, but they pierced Edward's heart. Mia, who was standing nearby, saw the moment and smiled softly. She didn't say anything, but her eyes said everything. As Edward paid the bill, he looked at Mia and said, "You're very kind. Thank you for taking care of him." She shook her head. "He took care of me, actually. Kids remind us how to smile." Edward didn't know how to reply to that. For a second, he felt like she could see right through the walls he had built around himself. He handed her the money, but when their eyes met, he realized something: she didn't care who he was. To her, he wasn't a billionaire. He was just a father with a little boy. When they walked out of the diner, the cold wind hit their faces, but it didn't feel as harsh as before. Liam held his father's hand tighter than usual. Edward looked down at him, then glanced back at the diner's window. Inside, Mia was cleaning tables again, humming softly. Her kindness had left a mark on both of them. As Edward started the car, Liam said quietly, "Daddy, I like her." "She's nice." Edward smiled faintly, starting the engine. "Yes," he said, "she really is." But deep down, he knew it was more than just niceness. That woman had unknowingly touched something deep in his heart. Something he thought was lost long ago. The ability to care, to feel, to truly connect. As they drove away, Edward kept glancing in the mirror, watching the diner grow smaller behind them. He didn't know it yet, but that simple morning, the laughter, the pie. The warmth of a stranger was the beginning of a change that would soon turn his world upside down. The diner was starting to get busier as the morning moved into late hours. The soft clinking of plates, the murmur of conversations, and the smell of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon filled the air. Liam was sitting at his booth, happily playing with his toy car, making little racing noises under his breath. Edward, who had been trying and failing to keep up with emails and calls earlier, was now watching his son more closely. There was something he hadn't expected. Liam was laughing freely, talking to a stranger, and for the first time in months, Edward felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't realized he was missing. Mia, the waitress, noticed that the little boy had chocolate syrup on his sleeve from the pancakes. She was quick to step in, carefully cleaning it with a napkin and gently guiding his hand. "There we go, all clean now," she said, her voice soft and encouraging. Liam looked at her and smiled, a smile so bright that it seemed to light up the entire booth. Edward, still standing quietly nearby, couldn't take his eyes off the scene. He was amazed by her patience, the way she didn't rush or scold, and the way she made his son feel comfortable and important. He had tried to do that himself many times, but his busy life had always gotten in the way. Watching Mia now, he realized just how much he had been missing. Then it happened. Liam, in his excitement, accidentally knocked over his glass of milkshake. The thick, chocolatey liquid spilled over the edge of the table, soaking his shirt and making a small puddle on the floor. All eyes in the diner turned to see what had happened. Edward's first instinct was frustration. He was used to having control over everything, his business, his money, his life, and now he felt helpless in this simple, human moment. But before he could say a word, Mia was already there, moving quickly but calmly. She knelt beside Liam, took the napkins, and whispered reassuringly, "It's okay. Accidents happen. Don't worry." Her calmness had a magical effect. Liam's tears stopped before they even began. Edward watched in silence as Mia guided Liam to the restroom. She talked to him the whole way, softly asking about his favorite cartoons and pretending that the little toy car was driving along the walls, racing from the booth to the sink. Liam laughed, his giggles echoing in the small tiled space. Edward stayed outside the door, listening. He didn't want to interrupt, but he couldn't tear his eyes away either. For the first time in years, he saw someone caring for his son with such patience and tenderness, something no amount of money or power could buy, inside the restroom. Mia helped Liam remove the wet shirt and replaced it with a clean one from the diner's lost and found box. She made sure it fit comfortably, smoothing it over his shoulders and laughing softly when the boy commented on how funny it smelled. Then she knelt down to his eye level, looking into his eyes and saying things like, "You're doing so well, buddy. Look at you, all cleaned up." Her words were simple, but they carried warmth, encouragement, and love. Liam's small fingers gripped the fabric of his new shirt as he smiled up at her, feeling safe and important. Edward had never felt such a strong wave of emotion. His eyes welled up as he watched this stranger show care in a way he hadn't been able to for his own child. Mia didn't know who he was, and she didn't care. She wasn't trying to impress anyone or gain anything in return. She was just being kind. Edward realized that all his wealth, all his fancy toys and gadgets for Liam, couldn't replace what this woman was giving him freely: attention, patience, and love. Something inside Edward shifted in that moment. He felt both guilt and gratitude. He had the money to buy anything, but he had never known that the simplest acts helping his son dress, comforting him, making him laugh were priceless. When they returned to the booth, Liam was smiling brighter than Edward had ever seen. He was holding his toy car, playing with it again, and occasionally looking up at Mia as she walked by. Edward followed slowly, still unsure of what to say. Finally, he mustered the courage to speak. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice breaking slightly. Mia looked at him, surprised, and shook her head. "It's nothing. He's a wonderful little boy. I just wanted him to feel okay." Edward nodded, swallowing hard. The sincerity in her voice made his throat tighten. He realized he had never seen anyone care about Liam this way before, as Mia returned to her duties. Edward stayed sitting at the booth, watching his son. Liam was full of life now, laughing at a joke he had made up about the toy car racing against an imaginary monster. Edward realized that this was the first time he had seen Liam genuinely happy in months. The little things, the laughter, the excitement, the sparkle in his eyes were what mattered most, and Mia had reminded him of that. It was a revelation that left him stunned. All the money and success he had accumulated felt empty compared to the warmth that filled this small diner. For the next few minutes, Edward just observed. He noticed every small detail, the way Mia bent down to his son's level, the gentle touch when she handed him the clean shirt, the way she encouraged him without ever making him feel small or weak. He realized that kindness wasn't just about gestures. It was about attention, presence, and patience. Mia had given Liam all of that without expecting anything in return, and Edward felt a mixture of awe and shame. How many times had he been too busy or distracted to do the same for his own child? At that moment, Edward made a quiet promise to himself. He didn't yet know how he would change, but he knew he couldn't let this moment pass. He wanted Liam to feel this kind of care every day, not just in a brief encounter with a kind stranger. He wanted to be the father his son deserved, someone who could make him smile and laugh freely. Watching Mia, he understood that wealth and status were meaningless if they couldn't bring happiness and comfort to the people you love most. Mia, unaware of the profound impact she was having, went about her work with the same gentle demeanor. She refilled drinks, wiped tables, and occasionally glanced at Liam, ensuring he was still happy and comfortable. She treated every child in the diner with the same kindness. But there was something different about Liam, a spark that reminded her of her younger brother. She couldn't explain why, but she felt a connection to him immediately. Edward, still observing quietly, felt the same unexplainable pull. For the first time, he understood that some people enter your life for reasons you can't see at first, to teach, to guide, to awaken emotions long forgotten. The morning moved slowly, filled with small, meaningful interactions. Liam's laughter continued, echoing softly through the diner. Edward kept his phone aside, letting himself be present, and felt a strange lightness he hadn't felt in years. He realized that this simple breakfast, this encounter with a waitress who cared for his son as if he were her own, had already begun to change him. The walls he had built around his heart, the walls created by business, stress, and fear of inadequacy, were slowly crumbling. For the first time, he felt hope that he could reconnect with his son, that he could be the father Liam needed, as the breakfast came to an end. Mia brought over the bill, placing it lightly on the table. "You both have such a wonderful morning," she said softly. Liam smiled up at her, holding her hand for a moment before letting go. Edward picked up the check and paid, his hands trembling slightly. He didn't need to say anything else. The gratitude in his eyes said it all. Mia simply nodded and returned to her station, unaware that she had touched not only Liam's heart, but Edward's as well, as they prepared to leave. Edward helped Liam with his coat, this time with a new sense of patience and attention. Liam looked up and smiled, the kind of smile that melted Edward's heart. He realized that something had shifted inside him, something deep and essential. Mia had not only helped his son, but it also reminded him of what it truly meant to care, to be present, and to love without conditions. And though he didn't yet understand the full extent of the change, he knew one thing clearly: this morning, this waitress, and this simple act of kindness had begun a journey that would transform their lives forever. Edward and Liam stepped out of the small diner into the chilly morning air. The sun was still low, casting a soft golden light over the street. Liam, holding his father's hand tightly, was skipping slightly, his toy car tucked safely under his arm. Edward, however, walked slowly, his mind racing with thoughts he hadn't allowed himself to think for a long time. He kept glancing back at the diner, watching Mia through the window as she went about her work, wiping tables, refilling drinks, and greeting other customers with her warm, effortless smile. There was something about the way she moved, so calm and natural, that stayed with him. She hadn't treated Liam like a fragile child, or like someone to be pitied. She had treated him as if he mattered, as if he was just like any other kid. And in that moment, Edward realized just how little he had been doing that for his own son. The drive home was quiet. Liam occasionally spoke about his toy car, about how it could race and jump. But mostly he kept looking out of the window, his little mind full of excitement and new energy. Edward, on the other hand, was lost in thought. He replayed the morning over and over in his head. The laughter. The way Mia had bent down to Liam's level. The gentle way she had helped him with his coat and cleaned him up after the milkshake accident. Edward had always thought that providing for Liam meant buying him the best toys, the latest gadgets, and giving him money for everything he could ever need. But he realized now that none of that mattered as much as the love, attention, care that Mia had shown without expecting anything in return. That evening, Edward could not focus on work. He sat in his office, the city lights twinkling through the large windows, but his mind kept drifting back to Mia and what she had done. He remembered how she had spoken to Liam, softly and patiently, making him laugh and feel safe. He thought about how Liam had smiled so freely, how he had laughed so naturally, something Edward hadn't heard from him in months. He felt a strange mix of guilt and awe. He had money, power, and influence, but Mia had shown him something priceless, something that couldn't be bought: kindness. He realized that while he had given Liam everything he could buy, he had not given him the one thing a child truly needs: time, attention, an emotional connection. Edward decided he could not let this moment pass. He needed to make a change, but he didn't yet know how. He kept thinking about Mia, about the way she had treated his son with such care, and about how his own life had been missing that very same touch. He thought about how easy it was for her to connect with Liam, how she made him laugh and feel important without even trying. That simplicity, that natural warmth, was something Edward wanted not only for his son, but for himself as well. He realized that being a father was more than providing. It was about presence, patience, and love. He had been so focused on success and wealth that he had forgotten the simplest truths about being a parent. The next morning, Edward couldn't sleep. He kept turning over the events of the previous day in his mind, and every time he did, he felt both regret and hope. He wanted to fix things. He wanted Liam to have more moments like the one he had shared with Mia, moments full of laughter, care, and emotional safety. He decided he needed to go back to the diner. It was a strange feeling for a man of his status to think of returning to a small local diner just to see a waitress. But he wasn't thinking about himself. He wanted Mia to understand the impact she had made, and he wanted to see if there was a way to bring that same warmth into Liam's everyday life. When he arrived at the diner the next morning, Mia was there, setting up tables and arranging the chairs. She looked up and smiled when she saw him, thinking perhaps he had come back for breakfast again. Edward approached her cautiously. "Hello," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Mia smiled politely. "Good morning, sir. Back for pancakes?" Edward paused, then shook his head. "Actually, I came to thank you." His words were simple, but there was a sincerity in his tone that Mia noticed immediately. She raised an eyebrow, slightly confused but curious. "Thank me for?" she asked softly. Edward looked down at Liam, who was sitting quietly at a nearby table, his eyes wide with curiosity. "For yesterday. For helping him? For being kind to my son?" Edward said, his voice catching slightly. "I saw how patient you were, how gentle you were, and I realized something important." He stopped, unsure how to continue. Mia listened quietly, her hands folded in front of her, waiting for him to speak. Edward took a deep breath. "I've spent so much time trying to give Liam everything: money, gifts, gadgets. But I forgot something more important. I forgot to be there. I forgot to show him love and care in ways he truly understands. What you did for him yesterday, it reminded me of that. And I want to change that. I want him to feel cared for every day, not just for a moment." Mia's eyes softened, but she didn't say anything yet. She simply looked at him, waiting. Edward continued, "I don't know if it's possible, but I want you to help me make sure my son can feel safe, loved, and happy." You showed me how." Mia was taken aback. She never expected such words from a man like Edward Grant, someone so wealthy and powerful. She had only acted out of kindness, not expecting anything in return. But now, hearing him speak so openly, she realized the depth of the impact her actions had made. "Sir," she said softly, "I didn't do it to teach you anything. I just wanted him to be happy, even for a little while." Edward shook his head, smiling faintly. It's more than that. You taught me more than I could ever teach him with money or gifts. You reminded me what it means to be a father, and I want that to continue. If you are willing, I want you to be a part of his life, to help him feel safe and cared for, not because of me, but because he deserves it. Mia felt tears prick her eyes. She looked at Liam, who was now smiling shyly, sensing the importance of the moment. She felt a warmth in her chest she couldn't explain. She nodded slowly. I would like that, she said. Edward's eyes glistened with unshed tears. He realized that this simple act, inviting Mia into their lives, could bring the care and love Liam needed and deserved. He felt a weight lift from his shoulders, a weight he hadn't even realized was there. It was a relief unlike any business deal he had ever closed. The diner staff had been watching quietly. Witnessing the exchange between Edward and Mia, some wiped tears from their eyes. Others whispered to each other about the unusual but touching scene. Edward turned to Liam and knelt down to his level. Do you remember yesterday? He asked gently. Liam nodded, eyes wide. You were happy, right? Edward asked. Liam nodded again, a big smile spreading across his face. Edward hugged him tightly, feeling the boy's small arms wrap around his neck. For a moment, all the years of missed time, missed moments, and missed connection melted away. He felt hope that he could rebuild his relationship with Liam, and that kindness could now be a guiding force in their lives. As they left the diner, Edward felt something he had never felt before. Gratitude not for money, not for power, but for the simple, selfless act of another human being. Mia had changed his perspective, shown him what really mattered, and opened a door that had long been closed. For the first time, he realized that real wealth was not measured in dollars, but in love, care, and presence. That day, Edward promised himself he would never forget this lesson. And as Liam held his hand, smiling and laughing, he knew that their lives had taken a turn, one that would lead them to a deeper, more meaningful connection, filled with warmth and understanding. The morning sun spilled softly over the quiet streets as Edward, Liam, and Mia stood near the diner, the air filled with the gentle hum of city life waking up. It was one of those rare mornings where the world seemed to hold its breath, letting something extraordinary unfold. Edward looked at Mia with a mix of admiration and deep gratitude. He had returned not for breakfast or coffee, but to express something he could no longer keep inside. He wanted to acknowledge the gift she had given his son, and unknowingly himself. For the first time in a long while, Edward felt vulnerable. He was used to commanding rooms, negotiating deals, and controlling outcomes. But now he realized that some moments in life were bigger than business, bigger than wealth. This was one of those moments. Mia, meanwhile, felt slightly nervous. She had only acted out of instinct the day before, offering Liam kindness, care, and patience. She had never imagined that a simple act could touch someone so deeply. She looked at Edward, waiting, unsure what he would say next. Liam, sensing the seriousness of the moment, held his toy car close, but stayed quiet. He had no words for the strange mix of emotions swirling around him: relief, joy, curiosity, and a budding sense of excitement. He only knew that the world felt different this morning, somehow lighter, safer, and filled with possibility. Edward took a deep breath and spoke slowly, choosing each word with care. Mia, yesterday what you did for Liam was more than kindness. It was love. Something I have been unable to give in the way he deserves, and I want to change that. His voice trembled slightly, betraying the emotion he tried to keep under control. Mia's eyes widened. She had expected gratitude, maybe a polite thank you. But the depth of sincerity and emotion in Edward's voice caught her off guard. She felt a lump in her throat. It was rare for anyone, especially someone like Edward, to speak with such humility. I want you to be part of his life, Edward continued. I can give him everything money can buy, but I cannot give him the one thing he truly needs. Someone who cares, someone who is patient, someone who can guide him, support him, and make him feel safe. You already did that, and I cannot let it go unnoticed. He paused, taking a shaky breath as he looked at Liam. The boy's small hands fidgeted with his toy car, eyes wide, taking in every word. Edward turned back to Mia, his gaze steady and intense. "I am asking you, would you consider helping me care for him? Not for my sake, not for money, but because you have a gift. A gift that Liam needs, and one that I cannot provide alone." Mia felt tears welling in her eyes. She had never thought of herself as someone extraordinary. To her, helping Liam had been simple, natural. But hearing Edward speak like this, seeing the raw emotion and sincerity on his face, she realized how profound her simple acts of care had been. I don't know what to say," she whispered softly. "I never expected this." Edward smiled faintly, almost apologetically. "Then don't say anything yet. Just know that your presence in his life could change everything. And if you are willing, I want him to have that." Liam, who had been watching quietly, finally spoke. "Will you stay with me?" His voice was small, tentative, but full of hope. Mia knelt down to his level and smiled warmly. "I would love to," she said. Liam's face lit up instantly, a bright, unguarded smile spreading across his cheeks. He hugged her tightly, and for a moment Edward felt the full weight of gratitude and relief wash over him. He realized that Mia's kindness had already begun to reshape his son's world, and now she was offering to continue that in a more permanent way. Edward then took another step forward, the kind of step that only someone truly humble could take. He explained, gently and with purpose, that he wanted to provide Mia with stability, support, and an opportunity she might never have imagined. He offered her a management position in one of his restaurant chains, complete with full benefits, a secure income, and a college fund for her younger brother. But more importantly, he emphasized that her role with Liam would not be transactional. "This is not about a job," he said softly. "It's about helping my son grow, laugh, and feel safe. And I cannot thank you enough for already starting that." Mia's hands trembled slightly as she absorbed his words. She was overwhelmed, not by the money or the opportunity, but by the trust Edward was placing in her. He wasn't offering charity. He was offering respect, recognition, and partnership. And in that recognition, she felt the depth of human connection that she had always hoped to find in her life, a connection that transcended status, wealth, and background. She realized that this was a turning point not only for Liam, but for herself as well. The diner staff had been watching quietly, witnessing this quiet, extraordinary moment unfold. Some wiped tears from their eyes, while others whispered to each other, marveling at the unexpected display of sincerity and love. Edward, noticing their presence, felt a deep sense of humility. He understood that life's most important moments were often simple, intimate, and unplanned. And yet, those moments left the deepest impressions. Watching Mia and Liam together, he felt an overwhelming sense of hope. The boy he had worried about, the son he had feared he couldn't reach, was now smiling and feeling loved in a way Edward had never thought possible. After a few quiet moments, Edward knelt beside Liam and hugged him tightly. "You are going to have someone wonderful in your life now," he whispered. Liam's small arms wrapped around him in return, and he looked at Mia with a mixture of joy and wonder. "I like her," he said simply. Edward smiled, tears brimming in his eyes. "Yes, you do. And she likes you too. That's what matters." He realized that this day marked a turning point not just for his son, but for himself as well. He had learned the value of humility, patience, and the transformative power of kindness. Mia knelt down, smiling at both Edward and Liam. "I'll do my best," she said softly. "I promise to help him, guide him, and make sure he knows he's important." Liam hugged her again, squeezing tightly, and in that embrace, Edward felt something shift inside him, a sense of completeness he had never experienced despite all his wealth. For the first time, he understood that true happiness could not be bought. It had to be nurtured through care, presence, and love. Edward then spoke quietly but firmly, looking directly at Mia. "You've already given him something I couldn't. You've given him joy. You've given him confidence. And That is priceless. Mia felt tears slide down her cheeks as she listened. She had never imagined that her small, simple actions could have such a profound effect. Yet here she was, standing with the boy she had helped, seeing the genuine gratitude in Edward's eyes. It was a moment she would never forget. The three of them stood together in front of the diner, each feeling the weight and beauty of what had just happened. Edward realized that he had been given a rare gift, a chance to correct the past and truly be the father Liam needed. Mia understood that her instinctive kindness had the power to change lives. And Liam knew, in his small heart, that he was finally seen, loved, and cared for in a way that mattered. The world around them seemed to pause, honoring this rare and powerful moment of human connection, as they walked to the car. Liam's hand firmly in Mia's and Edward's hands, Edward felt a deep sense of peace. The day had started like any other, but it had transformed into something extraordinary. A day when hearts connected across differences, when wealth and status became meaningless, and when the simple act of caring had created a bridge between two worlds. He knew that this was only the beginning. Together, they would navigate the future, a future filled with laughter, love, guidance, and hope. And all of it had begun with the gentle, selfless act of a waitress who had seen a boy in need and responded with her heart. Edward glanced at Mia once more, silently thanking her. He didn't need words. The bond between them spoke louder than anything he could say. And as Liam skipped ahead, full of joy and trust, Edward knew that his life and his son's would never be the same again. They had found something priceless: connection, compassion, and love. A simple act of kindness had created a lifetime of change.